Welcome to the Deep Dive. Okay, so today we're plunging into something, well, pretty fascinating on the global stage.
Definitely a significant moment.
We're talking about China's 2025 military parade. And what makes it really grab your attention, the central mystery, you could say, is the absence of Donald Trump, a former U.S. president, not at this major international event.
A very noticeable absence.
So our mission today really is to figure out why. Why wasn't he invited? What's this telling us about, global alliances right now?
And the ripple effects, too.
Exactly. The ripple effects of such a, pointed diplomatic move. We've got our sources lined up. But just starting out, think about it. What does it signal when a major world leader gets left off that kind of guest list?
It's not subtle, is it? That kind of omission speaks volumes.
It really does. Okay, so let's set the scene. China's 2025 parade. Our sources paint this picture of a huge spectacle.
Oh, absolutely. Designed to impress, but also designed to send a very clear message. It's carefully orchestrated.
And the guest list itself, high profile, doesn't quite cover it.
Not at all. You had Vladimir Putin there.
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un. And around 26 other world leaders alongside them.
A packed event. But the type of attendee is key here.
Crucial. Our sources indicate they were largely from countries friendly to China or, aligned with its diplomatic and regional goals.
So a specific crowd.
Very much so. The guest list itself was almost like a strategic document. Every name mattered.
And then there's the flip side, who wasn't there? Which is where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
Our sources highlight this stark absence. No representatives from the US, none from Western Europe. At an event this big, that's significant.
It feels like more than just a diary clash, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It screams deliberate.
And that's what our analysis points to. China's intent through that guest list seems, abundantly clear. It looks like a deliberate move to showcase unity.
Unity among whom, specifically?
Among states that Beijing views, or wants to portray, as standing opposed to U.S. dominance globally. So it wasn't just about parading military kit. It was a carefully curated display. Strategic partnerships put front and center, signaling a real shift towards what some sources are calling a new global bloc.
A new bloc. Wow. So less about tradition, more about defining a future alignment.
Precisely. It was about drawing a line, defining a new geopolitical landscape right there on the parade ground.
So if it was that deliberate, that much of a statement, what was China really aiming for? Why invite these leaders and pointedly exclude those ones? What's the deeper strategy?
Well, it seems pretty clear it wasn't just a snub, it was a potent message. Our sources widely interpreted this as China directly underscoring its disapproval of current U.S. policies at the time.
Disapproval, okay. But it sounds like more than just being unhappy.
Oh, it went deeper. It served to actively reinforce partnerships, specifically with countries Beijing saw as, quote, fellow challengers to American influence. Think Russia, North Korea.
So consolidating relationships with those who share their view?
Exactly. Consolidating a bloc of nations publicly that perhaps share a vision of a changing world order. It wasn't just flexing military muscle.
It was diplomatic muscle flexing too.
Yes, asserting diplomatic independence, redefining alliances very, very publicly.
And doing it in front of a receptive audience?
Precisely. This choice reflects not just the, frankly, deteriorating U.S.-China relationship then, but also China's goal. Military strength, yes, but also geopolitical autonomy.
Autonomy. Right.
And do in front of friendly faces.
Yeah.
So the parade becomes this stage, this powerful platform to push the idea of a post-U.S. world order and lock in relationships with its chosen partners. A very public realignment.
Telling the world which way they're heading, that's bold. And it leads us straight into the context, doesn't it? The backdrop of all this, U.S.-China tensions. Why were things so bad?
Yeah, what was going on that led to such a public freeze-out?
What drove that diplomatic chill?
Well, it raises that important question. How much does domestic politics actually bleed into international invites? The timing is key. Trump's exclusion happened when trade tariffs were escalating like crazy. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Constant headlines.
And lots of other international disputes bubbling up under his administration. Things were already seriously strained between Washington and Beijing. It created this really contentious atmosphere.
Can you remind us, what sort of tariffs and disputes are we talking about? Just to ground it.
Sure. We're talking hundreds of billions in U.S. duties on Chinese goods. China hitting back with its own tariffs. Big fights over intellectual property, tech transfers, the South China Sea.
A lot of friction points.
A huge amount. Each one ratcheting up the pressure The diplomatic environment was just incredibly fraught.
And Trump's foreign policy style, the whole America first thing, that played into it too.
It certainly seems to have, according to our sources. His administration's approach was often described as unilateral, sometimes antagonistic.
Right.
Actions like cutting foreign aid, questioning alliances, that America first rhetoric, it all contributed to a climate where, perhaps from Beijing's perspective, extending an invitation just wasn't on the cards.
So the diplomatic ground was already pretty icy.
Very icy. And China's move with the parade invitation, or lack thereof, was a very visible sign of that underlying chill.
Okay, so China sends this clear signal, relations are tense. How did the U.S. side, specifically former President Trump, react to being left out? Did he just ignore it?
He definitely didn't ignore it. His responses were quite revealing, actually.
How so?
Well, when he was asked directly about not being invited, his public line was that the idea of attending never even crossed his mind.
Okay, a dismissive approach initially?
Initially, yes. But then, things got a bit more complicated. He went on social media and started making comments about Russia and North Korea conspiring against America with China at the parade.
Conspiring against America. That's strong language, especially on social media from a former leader.
Extremely strong.
Yeah.
And while maybe official diplomatic reactions were kept low-key, you can imagine that language doesn't exactly help mend fences.
Right. Probably deepens the mistrust.
Exactly. It's like that domestic rhetoric spilling over and making the international situation even trickier. He also brought up history.
History?
Yeah, emphasizing the U.S. role in helping China win World War II. Sort of implying, perhaps, that history should have warranted an invite.
Interesting. So a mix of dismissal and something else.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Despite saying it never crossed his mind, there's this undercurrent, maybe frustration or grievance about being excluded from such a major event. A definite contrast there.
It really paints a picture of complex dynamics, doesn't it? Deep fissures showing. So let's try and pull these threads together for everyone listening. What's the bottom line here? The core takeaway from this whole parade situation?
I think the main takeaway is that Trump wasn't invited because of this potent mix. It was deep diplomatic tensions meeting these rapidly shifting global alliances.
Right.
And China wasn't just holding a parade, they were using the parade very strategically as a stage.
A stage for what, primarily?
To overtly promote this idea of a post-US world order, and to very clearly, very publicly, reaffirm its ties with a select group of partners, especially those who seemed aligned with that vision.
So less a celebration, more a declaration, and a signal about the shifting global power balance.
Precisely. It wasn't just about military might, though that was there. It was a calculated public statement about a new geopolitical reality, a sort of non-verbal manifesto from China about its future role and its chosen friends.
A powerful symbol of those evolving dynamics.
Absolutely. A visual cue, you could say, of a changing world map and a clear signal of China's intentions moving forward. Spoke volumes without saying a word about priorities.
Really fascinating stuff. And it certainly makes you think about how these gestures, these diplomatic choices, echo far beyond the event itself. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into China's 2025 parade.
My pleasure.
We've looked at that strategic guest list, the tensions behind the exclusion, and the pretty bold statement that absence made.
And maybe the most compelling thought, is how these seemingly simple things, an invitation, or like here, the lack of one, can actually signal huge seismic shifts in global power and alliances.
A potent reminder.
Definitely. A reminder of the subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways the world stage is constantly being reshaped.
Which leaves us all with a question to ponder, doesn't it? How might future international events keep acting as these kinds of signposts, indicators of evolving geopolitics? And what does that mean for how you understand the global stage going forward? Something to keep thinking about.
Indeed.
That's all for this deep dive. Until next time.